Hello, BookTube. I've got a new episode of Last Week in BookTube for you today. It's an abbreviated episode as I work my way back into the full glories of Last Week in BookTube. But there were some things that I wanted to point out, just in case you missed them, things that came to my mind, and that I wanted to make sure I put links for so that you could see them if they interested you. And the Last Week in BookTube starts out with a dark shadow, and it ends with a dark shadow. So the dark shadow it starts out with is a wide and apparently growing prevalence of anti-Steve read-alongs, where all the cool kids on BookTube get together and have read-alongs and then pointedly don't invite me. So they're voxing to each other and emailing each other, and then they're making vlogs about it and how much fun it was. Without me, while I sit on the sidelines, weeping sad clown tears. So that was the dark shadow that we have to start with. But before we get to the shadow we're going to end with, I thought I'd bring up some other things here that I noticed. Like, for instance, Peg, at her channel, showed off a very natty Mondrian knitted skirt, but also talked about the Gold Dagger Awards for mystery novels. And there are 10 candidates, and I was looking at the list. I looked over the list this year because it slipped right by me. You go to Peg's channel for awards so that you're kept up to date. And of the 10 books, one of them was Attica Locke's Bluebird, which won the Edgar Award. And I've read 6 of the books on the list, and I love Attica. So whether it wins or not, and whether or not you follow the Edgar Awards to have seen it win that, I highly recommend it. I don't remember if I ever showed it on this channel, but boy, oh boy, was it good. It's about a Texas law enforcement officer who's black, and who has, therefore, that simple fact alone infinitely complicates his job. And like all the best thriller main characters, his job is, in essence, extremely simple because he is a true blue hero. But all of a sudden, it's you know, you see these novels in a genealogy going back 100 years. Right? They call me Mr. Tibbs. it's you always get that, and good writers, or Walter Mosley, the good writers always do a great job of it. And this is a fantastic example. So I want to recommend. I'll put all this description down in the description box down below. But I want to make sure I recommend Attica for those of you who are interested in murder and thriller novels. And what else have we got here? Oh yes, Katie at Books and Things all week long did her Barsetshire week. Celebrating the Barchester novels of Anthony Trollope, which, of course, reminded me of my own our read-along of Can You Forgive Her, and made me want to do another Trollope read-along. I don't know how that's going to work. We're going to have to figure that out, right? We have one more week of our Gospel read-along, and then June is the Iliad, where I'm hoping you'll all join me for reading the Iliad together. I read the Iliad every June, but this is the first time I'll have lots and lots of people with me. And August is the Odyssey, but that leaves July. We have to start preliminary thinking about July. But her series of videos on the Barchester novels, they've been so good, and she's of course a true believer. So well worth your time to watch. And there's a Anthony Andrews who's he's a 12-year-old booktuber. So he's 16 years younger than I am. And he's done a series of vlogs about a trip to Ireland. They've been just utterly delightful. His channel's wonderful. I'm glad he's back. So I'm hoping I got his name right. I just jotted down notes very quickly before I lose all my sunlight. But I think I did. And even so, those of you who watch BookTube as avidly as I do, will know what I'm talking about, because we now have a back end. We now have a youngest booktuber in addition to the oldest booktuber, which I think is Olive at a book hall. Let me see here. Adam at Memento Mori has started a very ambitious year-long club on his channel. It's the Book2 Film Club, and 2 is the number 2, because he's too cool for school. And what it is every month he is discussing a book and a movie adaptation. And because it's Adam, there are no predictable choices anywhere. He made a video. I'll leave the link to the video down below. He made a video announcing his roster, and there are no predictable choices anywhere in it. Can you imagine the version of this that I would do if I did it? The choices would be so incredibly predictable. And instead, with him, you have all sorts of artsy-fartsy movies, and there's long stuff, and there's boring stuff, and the books in question will take you well outside of your comfort zone. I'm strongly tempted. I don't think there's much that could make me watch some of the movies again that he has listed. I took enough film classes to know that I already hate these things like a canker in the mouth, but I'm strongly tempted to do the books, to go along with the books. But of course, you know, not if I'm not wanted. Which brings us back to the dark cloud that we started with. We've got all these clubs and read-alongs and sprints and whatnots and buddy reads. Everybody's a buddy on BookTube except Steve. Nobody wants Steve along because he smells. Anyway, I don't want to... Let's just move on. We've got a couple of other things here. Oh, yes. There's another thing that I have to point out before we finish up with the other shadow for the last week in BookTube, and that's Matthew at MCs Books. He did a video constructing identities on BookTube, and his videos, you just have to see them to believe them. He leaps straight into the deep end of the ideological pool and makes videos that are not only incredibly thought-provoking, but also incredibly beautiful to watch. It must take forever to do. Jeez. Talk about other ends of the spectrum. On one end, there's a weird old guy with smallpox scarves from 1782 making videos in the fading light on a crappy computer, and on the other end, you've got cinematic quality, nerd writer quality stuff that Matthew does on a regular basis. So I wanted to recommend it. And then we get to the other shadow that was crossing BookTube last week, and that was a kind of malaise that spread across BookTube. I saw it in a whole bunch of places, in a whole bunch of different iterations. I saw tweets from some very strong, able, experienced booktubers like Olive at a Book Olive, or Jennifer, insert literary pun here, sort of complaining it's not quite the right word, sort of archly noticing and not at all liking spiky, snarky, dismissive comments in their comments field. People who they make the mistake, as some of you will know if you've been watching BookTube. In some quarters of BookTube, it's a cardinal error to speak your opinion of a book on a video. There's still a huge substrata of BookTube viewership that expects this to be a cheerleading squad, one enormous coordinated cheerleading squad, probably in matching Mondrian skirts. So when you get in front of a camera and you say, well, here's the thing I didn't like, and I know it's really popular, but I didn't like it, I'm sorry about that, and here are my reasons why, you're going to get pushback, I believe is the 21st century term. And they were making comments to that effect, and also connected to that was Rachel Morrow on her channel. She was thinking about her time on BookTube and made not a comment about trolls or negative comments, but rather about the fact that she's been making videos without gaining any traction in terms of subscriber count. And all of that malaise was sort of brought to a head and perfectly enunciated, as it so often is, by Karl Anderson at The Lonesome Reader, who made a video wondering, the title was wondering whether or not BookTube was harming his love of reading. Now, I don't know Eric. I've never met him, and I doubt I ever will, but I've read every word that he's ever published for the outside consumption, and I've seen every one of his videos, and I don't believe that a full-scale nuclear exchange between Russia and the United States could harm his love of reading. I take his point as being something adjacent to that, which is he talks about the anxiety of, for instance, posting a new video that you've worked hard on, knowing that someone is going to give it a dislike right away, and that it's going to get a couple more dislikes, that it's going to get a dislike no matter what it is, just reflexively. And also, you know, knowing that there's this vestigial, I hope, pressure to keep up with things and with posting and with whatnot, that creates an anxiety all around what is supposed to be our most beloved hobby. And when I took all those things together, I saw a kind of a darkness that periodically crops up on BookTube, but this one seemed worse than most of the earlier ones because this is at the heart of what we do. And I wanted to make a couple of observations of my own and also a strong recommendation. A couple of observations I want to make on my own involve making some distinctions. I myself think that we shouldn't care at all about subscriber counts. I know that whenever anybody says that on BookTube, there will be immediately a chorus of other booktubers who will say, "Oh, you say that, but you don't mean it." But I really do believe it. I really don't think we should care. If you found a community, that's what matters. So if you have 100 subscribers, but your comments field is good, and you're meeting people in your comments field, and they're watching what you do, and they're paying attention to it, and they're liking it, and you're liking their stuff, that's enough. Should be enough. The YouTube, as a platform, intentionally throws a spotlight on numbers because it's to YouTube's benefit to have all of us competing with each other. It doesn't benefit us. It benefits them. And I don't think that's very healthy. And there was another distinction that I wanted to make, which is the difference between a snarky, spiky, negative comment on a video where you say, "I didn't like The Shadow of the Wind," and a whole bunch of people leave comments saying, well, even insulting comments, saying, well, "I did and I don't know what's wrong with you," or "I did like it and I'm wondering if maybe the reason you didn't like it is because there were parts of it you didn't understand," or something like that, something maddening, where, the kind of dismissive or arrogant comment that if you got it in person would make you roll your eyes. There's a difference between that and what Eric was mentioning, where you post a video and it is immediately downvoted. A negative comment is someone who is thinking about what you're doing. They're thinking about the product, the content that you're putting out. They're just poorly socialized. They're they're rude. What Eric's commenting, what he's talking about, is something I've experienced myself, where you put a video out and it is immediately downvoted. I realized about a year ago that I had a couple of trolls, 2 trolls on this channel. And that's what that is. That's not, those two things aren't the same thing. Someone who leaves a rude negative comment can be won over, they can be convinced, and they can get used to you and be less rude. A troll is not sane. Trolls aren't sane. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have any control over their actions. There's no way to ever win them over. There's no way ever to coddle them. There's no way ever to find peace with them. They're not sane. They are compulsively doing the same thing over and over and over again, even though it wastes their time and brings them no pleasure whatsoever and gets no result. And about a year ago, I did a little test thing. It was also fun. I did it for fun. I did it so that you would enjoy it. But it was also in the back of my mind a test. I made a few second-long video in which my friend Deb and I simply wish you all a happy Valentine's Day, because I wanted to see if I put that up there, will it get 2 downvotes by my 2 trolls, and it did. And it did within 30 minutes. It didn't have to wait. It didn't have to sit up there. And recently, I thought, well, okay, I don't really care about displaying the like-dislike ratio on my videos, and trolls are looking at that. If they dislike your video, they can see a dislike on it, and that's maybe giving them part of the dopamine that keeps their insanity alive. So I figured out that there is a way, of course, an easy way to disable the viewership of the likes on your channel. But I went to an old YouTube hand. He doesn't make BookTube videos, but some of you have probably watched his content because he virtually never wears his shirt. And I asked him, okay, that's great. I did that, and he suggested that because he said if trolls can't see the dislikes, they'll go away. Eventually, they'll lose interest. I don't think that's entirely true. I think he was underestimating, because he was thinking of trolls as the first kind of person that I was talking about that just criticizes constantly. They would go away. Trolls aren't sane. They're insane. So they're not in their right mind. So they're obsessive. The only thing they care about is that I see their dislikes, and I still can. I asked this YouTube guru, is there a way for me to totally remove the like function from my videos, not just so that viewers can't see it, so that I can't see it either, so that I have no idea whatsoever. View count, fine. But what I wanted to know is there any way that I can deprive my two trolls of any kind of voice at all? Anything at all, not just comments. My strong advice to you, if you're in the position that Eric described, where you have a troll in your channel, block them immediately. Just block them immediately. I once resisted that, but they're not real. They're insane. They don't know what they're doing. So there's no point in putting up with it. Just block them immediately. But that still leaves them a way to signal, if not to speak, at least to signal some kind of effect on your video. And I wanted to know from this BookTube guru if there was any way to remove every single vestige of a troll's voice, every bit of it. And as far as he knows, there isn't a way to do that. So that puts the onus back on us. And that's what I wanted to wrap up this last week in BookTube with, is a call for the only possible solution to this malaise, this problem of carping critical comments and condescension and trolls and even low subscriber count. The only possible antidote to all of it is to remind ourselves, very consciously, remind ourselves why we're doing this in the first place. Eric points it out in his video. I'm sure that all of us pointed it out in videos before. I'm sure that Jennifer would. That we have to remind ourselves that this is 95% good and that we love it. And fortunately, last week in BookTube gave a perfect example of how to do that. So it's going to be my last recommendation. It's Mara at BooksLikeWhoa, a fantastic channel that you should all watch. And she did a video, things that I love about BookTube, that will perk you up. It will absolutely perk you up, especially if you're in a position where you're feeling some of these things. This is a video that you will very much want to watch. And never you mind that she announces in the video that it is a precursor to a video she's doing on the stuff she doesn't like about BookTube. I tell you, I can't win for losing with these people. But I will get to that video next time. When she does that video, I'm sure it will be lots of fun, because I don't think you can tell from this video, the one that I'm recommending, that she loves this so much. And she's right on all the points of her video, especially the one that came home to me, is something that actually Adam Mentamori mentioned it on, I think, Twitter just a few days ago. She makes the point that yes, snarky comments are bad, yes, trolls are bad, yes, but in other realms of YouTube, the gaming community, the beauty community, the fitness and lifestyle community, there's nothing like the inclusiveness or affection that we generally have here on BookTube. That's a thing. Her video is well worth watching, and that's a reminder well worth remembering, especially on weeks like this where it feels like there's a cloud. So that will dispel the second cloud hanging over BookTube. And as to dispelling the first one, I think you know what to do. Anyway, I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.